let's learn how to make components work together. Back in the beginning course, we added a carousel of bike images to our site. Now, we want to improve this feature based on the feedback we've gotten from our users. For example, I want to jump to a particular slide. I can't tell which slide I'm on. The images are too small. I can't see image details. Let's improve our image carousel to match this feedback.
Fortunately, our product manager has come up with a plan to address our users' concerns. We'll add a second carousel containing these small thumbnail images just below the original carousel. When the user clicks one of those thumbnails, we'll advance the original carousel to the same slide. The thumbnail for the current slide should look different than the other thumbnails so the user actually knows that it's been selected. And when the user clicks on an image in the big carousel, we'll show a pop-up with the image zoomed in. To do this, we'll need to learn how to connect AMP components together. We'll do that with AMP events and actions.
First of all, let's add that new carousel of thumbnail images.
Doing that, we'll learn how to use events and actions to synchronize components. And we'll also practice using documentation to discover component actions.
The original carousel only shows one image at a time because its type is set to slides. If a carousel component is set to type carousel instead, the carousel will show more than one slide at a time. Carousel is the default. So if we make a carousel of smaller images and make its type carousel, we'll get a carousel of thumbnails. Now, when a user clicks an image in the thumbnail carousel, the original carousel will shift to the corresponding slide. For this to work, we need to do two things. First, detect when the slide is clicked. And second, when that happens, change the carousel's current slide. How do we do that?
Well, you'll remember that earlier in this course we talked about events and actions. Detecting a click sounds like an event. Changing a slide also sounds like an action.
True.
Remember also that we can actually use an elements on attribute to register for an event. The tap event happens when somebody taps on a touchscreen or clicks on a mouse on a desktop computer. We can handle this event on each of the images in our thumbnails carousel. Actions are like functions we can call in components to make them change. We now need to find the action that changes the selected slide of a carousel. To do this, we'll look at the behavior section in the AMP carousel documentation. There we see that the action for changing the carousel to a specific slide is go to slide index equals n, where n is 0 indexed, which means that the first slide is index 0 and the second slide is going to be index 1. The go to slide action is used like a function method, which takes an argument called index.
Here's how that might look. First, we have an AMP carousel. Then we have a button whose on attribute is set to tap my custom carousel, go to slide, index equals 1. Again, tap specifies the event we're looking for. My custom carousel here is the name of the carousel where the action takes place. And the action is go to slide, setting the slide index to 1, which is, remember, the second slide in the carousel.
If you've done the beginning course, you'll remember that Glitch keeps your images in a folder called assets. You're going to need these images to complete the exercises. To view the images in your project, click the assets entry in the list of files on the left. To get the link to any single image, select the image from the list of assets on the right-hand side. Click the copy button next to the URL in the pop-up that appears. This is going to give you a link to that image. Now you can actually use that link wherever you want to use that image.
Now, let's add that new thumbnail carousel. You'll use the smaller images in the assets folder. First, add an AMP carousel and give it type carousel, a layout of fixed height, the class thumbnail carousel, and a height of 78 pixels. Give each thumbnail AMP image a layout of fixed, a width of 96 pixels, and a height of 72 pixels. The thumbnail images are called cheddar chase thumb, cheese thumb, and mouse thumb in that order. When any thumbnail AMP image is clicked, the corresponding image in the original carousel should be shown. Here's a hint. The original carousel should have an ID of carousel. And remember, the images are 0 indexed. Also, don't forget to give the images an appropriate tab index and a role of button for accessibility. Now pause the video and try this out.
When you're done, your code should look like this. Notice that we've made a new AMP carousel containing the thumbnail images, and we've given the first carousel an ID of carousel. When an AMP image in the second carousel is tapped or clicked, the action in the on attribute tells the first carousel to advance to slide 0, 1, or 2 respectively. Since the image URL in Glitch have long path names, we didn't include those here.